Good evening and welcome to The Bottom Line, a wrap of your business news for the day. My name is Nzinga Kunta. I'm standing in for Frances Hood while she's on maternity leave. Now, as usual, we start with the number of the day. Today, our number is 250 billion rand. That, according to payday lender Wonga, is what South Africans will be spending over the festive season. Now, they did a survey with over 6,000 South Africans who spoke about how much they'll be spending on food, flights and fun. The lender then took Statistics South Africa's mid-year population size estimates and expanded on those numbers to say that working-age South Africans will spend an average of 6,585 rand this festive season. They say that this means that South Africans are set to pump 254 billion rand into the economy. Now, that survey showed that over 70% of South Africans spend more than usual over the festive season, with food and drink taking up about 37% of budgets. So I wasn't entirely comfortable with that number because it looks so big and there's so many variables there. So I went back to see if I could find figures for how South Africans actually spent their money in December 2018. So that number drops considerably if you take a look at what BankServe said about how South Africans spent last year. In December 2018, South Africans spent 59 billion rand swiping. According to BankServe, 106 million transactions were recorded over the month of December last year, and that was mainly at restaurants, grocery shops and garages. Obviously, that excludes cash purchases, but there you have it, 250 billion rand set to be spent over the next month, according to Wonga. Let's stay with festive season spending. Dhashni Naidoo from Consumer Education at F&B joins me in studio. Thanks so much for your time on SABC News. Talk to us about festive season spending and what the most important piece of advice you would have for people watching is.
Festive season spending, as you've indicated by the numbers, tends to go up over this period of December and January. And for all of the reasons that you've already cited in the numbers and in your introduction. I think what we need to be conscious of is not allowing ourselves to get into trouble over the festive season by overextending ourselves and by not having planned or budgeted for the extra expenditure that we will see over the festive season on entertainment and food and travel, as you've seen. So the biggest tip we have at the moment is plan, think ahead, think about what you need, the extra money that you're going to need for this festive season, and think about how you're going to stick to that plan. Mm-hmm. It takes a lot of discipline to stick to a plan and stick to a budget and not be tempted by going out too often in the parties and spending more than you should on Christmas lunch and Christmas presents. So there's a lot of self-discipline and self-regulation that we need to exercise as consumers when we decide what that plan is and how we need to stick to it.
So we've been speaking about quite frivolous things, if you think about it, fun, flights, food and the like. But there's some people who, when they go home, no matter how much of a budget they have, will be called on to do more to fulfill the basic needs of their families, particularly if they are the sole breadwinner or one of the few successful people in their family. What do you do in a situation like that?
That's a difficult one, Nzinga, because how do you say no to your family that needs something? And so I think the trick for main breadwinners or income earners in a family is to cater for the additional family expenditure in their budgeting. And so how do you make sure that throughout the year you're putting aside for those emergency situations where you are going to be called upon to help out family members? It's difficult to say no. It's often very difficult. There's social pressures, there's family pressures to meet certain obligations, financial obligations as the chief breadwinners. And so while we can say to some people, don't do it if you can't afford it, it's not always possible. And so the trick again is to start saving. Saving is an important component of this. How do you save throughout the year on an ongoing, regular basis to make sure that you have a pool of funds should you need to tap into it in those instances?
Mm-hmm. What about people who perhaps are getting bonuses this year and are looking to decide how to spend it and also going to be met with those various temptations and getting swept up in the very festive atmosphere of December?
Absolutely. I think we've all worked hard and look forward to that 13th check or that bonus that's coming our way. And so the tendency often is to spend on entertainment or to treat ourselves to something special. I think, though, we need to, under the current economic environment, take a step back and to look at our financial situation. Many people find themselves over-indebted. So as much as there is a temptation to reward ourselves over this festive season, I think what we should start to do is look at how can we alleviate some of the financial stress that we are under by reducing or even eliminating debt that we have and credit owing. So that's the first step, is if you're owing money, see how you can redirect some of that bonus money to service that credit. The second thing we should think about doing is actually investing some of that money and putting it away for that emergency fund, for the rainy day that we may need it. And then finally, if you are in a position to reward yourself, think about carefully, though, what you would want to reward yourself with, or your family with. You know, if it's a little holiday or it's a night out or whatever it is that you can afford, is to then only, once you've addressed the credit and the savings issue, is then reward yourself.
We speak a lot about, when we're speaking about money issues, the over-indebtedness of consumers, the so-called poor savings culture that people have in South Africa. And often when there is advice being given, there's an element of shaming that comes with it that makes people not want to perhaps deal with their finances. What behavioral change would you suggest to someone who is in those situations and wants to get out?
I think the first thing starts with educating ourselves, understanding exactly what our situation is. Often we find that people who are over-indebted haven't realized how they have landed in that situation, or don't even understand the cost, the true cost of that credit. All they're looking at is the installment amount and not considering things like the interest and the other costs that go with it. So I think the first step is to actually understand our financial positions from understanding the cost of that credit. Okay. Also, we need to think about how we can free up some of our money to start saving. Slowly. So often we hear people say, I don't have enough at the end of the month to save. And so we need to think about how we reduce expenditure on some of those luxury items, some of those non-essential items, and redirect those funds to saving. All of this, though, having said that, all of this takes a lot of self-discipline, a lot of self-regulation, and also the confidence to be able to make some very difficult decisions when it's easy to just go online and spend and buy. You know, you get that mail that says 50% off on this online purchase or products. And so you're very tempted to do that. And so we need to think about how we self-regulate. Some of the ways in which you can do it is unsubscribe to all those emailers, you know, that often we get tempted by as consumers. You know, don't go online, don't go into online stores as often as you normally do. Try and break the addiction to online shopping, as an example.
Dhashni Naidoo from FNB Consumer Education, thanks so much for your time on The Full View and The Bottom Line this evening.